Mystic Gamer 7, and welcome back to some more Sims 4 Occult discussion. So, this is basically the little mini-series, or what I'm currently planning on being a mini-series, but at this point, who knows, it may turn out to be not so mini-series of talking about occults that can possibly come to The Sims, or maybe even just dreaming that they come to The Sims, and how I would like them to be done if they ever did actually come to The Sims. So far, we talked about, just sort of mentioned briefly the three that are already in there, just to talk about them, and then we also have talked about witches and werewolves. If you missed those 3 episodes, then you can check the description below for the playlist for this little series. And if you are caught up and you are enjoyed the series, don't forget to hit that like button. But that being said, let's continue on with the discussion. Anyway, this time around is going to be the one that I've been mentioning that I was sort of excited about talking about. Partially because they were sort of so meh in the Sims 3 that if they do it the way I think, how I would not think, but how I would want them to, it would be so much of a better comeback and so much better, just better in general. And that is, my leg, ow. As you could probably already tell by the titles, it's zombies. Now, that being said, it was you're probably well, technically, the Strangerville people have been referenced as zombies. There is a mod out there to make the Strangerville people actual zombies. Why? And honestly, zombies don't really necessarily do a whole lot, so why in the world would they be a fun occult to even have? And I don't even think in The Sims 3, at least not to my knowledge, you could even play as zombies. They were just things that popped up out of the ground every so often, and, were just there. But that being said, one of my all-time favorite shows, which I'm literally rewatching from Season 1 to, I think, Season 4, because Season 5 is about to come out, or either it's about to hit Netflix, I can't remember which. I think it's about to come out. I'm not really quite sure. Anyway, which is the last season, sadly, but it is iZombie. If you have not seen that series, and you like some of the more supernaturally type stuff, and you don't mind a little bit of, gore or whatever, it's not, super gory, but if you've watched, originals and, shows like that, where they do, use a lot of fake blood at times, if you don't mind those, then yes, I highly suggest watching it. But that is honestly the whole premise of this video, is if the zombies were somewhat like that. Basically, in the show, zombies actually are fully functioning humans, or at least they can be. And if they did that in The Sims, then you technically could play as them. They could be an actual playable, occult. And if they did, obviously, I don't know if there was, a thing that would come about if they, took a lot of the inspiration from that show, or if there's multiple shows out there that are sort of starting to lean that way, but if they at least took some of the ideas and it was okay to do, that would make the zombies actually different and interesting and sort of fun to play. Some of the mechanics that I would think in mind would be similar to, the vampires, the fact that the zombies need something to sustain them. In their case, it wouldn't be plasma. It'd technically be brains. Now, I don't know how they would technically go about doing that. They probably could find a way that maybe, maybe you have, a rabbit hole thing where the zombies go, because obviously they couldn't show anything like that, and you also wouldn't want it being the situation where they would kill off a sim to get what they need, or maybe there's a thing you can mail them in, or sign up for that. There are a few details that I'm not quite sure how they can work it around, or maybe they can even slightly change it. Maybe in this, in Sims, they can change it from something, instead of brains being something else, or, whatever, so that it could be more PG and more, easier to not kill other Sims for, or at least not the ones that you want, or something. I don't know how that whole situation would go down, but for purposes of not getting too complicated, I'm just going to keep referring to it as brains. So somehow there's a way that they obtain brains without necessarily killing a sim. And if they don't get that for a while, then they could possibly lose, like, become erratic, lose control. They wouldn't be able to really function very well. Basically, sort of, again, like the vampires do when they don't have plasma. They sort of just go. Like, once they see a food source, they go. They just, you can't even control it. You can't even stop them. They're just like, plasma! And they're gone. So something along those way. In the show, technically, once you go Romero, as I think they call it, basically full on, like the actual zombie that a lot of people know, the rotting flesh, the doesn't have any memory of themselves, not like controlling, thinking, nothing. Once they go to that, there's no way to come back. I would say, in reference to Sims, there should be a way that they can come back. Maybe they stay dazed for a few days afterwards, like as a side effect, and eventually they regain their full consciousness after they get food back into their system. But basically, being able to have full functioning zombies and like having these like certain things, like the zombies, obviously, they don't have. They become dead. They're the undead. They're technically, along with vampires, they're undead. So, you know, they could be pale unless, like, you go and get, like, spray tans or put on some sort of tanner or whatever, dye your hair, like, those type of functions to try to hide that you're a zombie. I feel like out of all the occults that I can think of bringing to the game, zombie is one of them. If you were a zombie, that is the one out of all of them that you most likely would want to hide from other people, is being a zombie. So that one, unlike like the aliens and some, that's the ones that I most understand. So, you know, maybe you want to keep up your appearance, or maybe you just want to look all natural zombie. That's interesting to say, but, you know, hey, if you want to be full natural zombie, go ahead and be full natural zombie. But also being able to have the option to try to, now obviously the hair thing wouldn't necessarily change. I mean, it depends. If they did that, it would not probably work for CC, like any custom hairs, or especially at least the alpha custom hairs, because the alpha custom hairs come with so many other colors usually. I don't know necessarily how it would work for that, but basically that's where the person playing the story can sort of fill in. You know, they can give them the white hair, the white, very light blonde to white hair, or and then eventually dye it if they want to. But the skin options, especially, granted there are also skin details if you use CC, but I found, at least, maybe it's just lucky that it worked with that particular skin detail, but if what I'm noticing, the ones that are more like overlays have that option to sort of change a little bit, because in my Alola Sulani Let's Play, Lily has a skin detail, but it's an overlay type skin detail, so it doesn't completely change things. Like, it's literally, it's an overlay. It's sitting basically on top, so it's adding a few things, but there's still things that are able to show through the skin details, and it actually registered her tan underneath the skin details. So technically, with overlays, there's a chance that this would still show, but, you know, tan your go get a tan. And for those who don't use skin details or don't use custom content, then obviously it wouldn't affect them. Me, as someone who uses a lot of CC, especially on my Sims, that's just something I think about, but it would still be cool to have that feature, like, you know, ways to cover up the fact that you're a zombie if you don't want people knowing that. But having that constant need to actually do that, or you start like losing, and also like you start losing control. I was about to go into another thought. My brain is literally like, I have this, I need to talk about this. But so basically you can lose control if you're not careful of like feeding your zombie, and they can come back from it, but it may take them a while. They may be like days for a bit or whatever, and then finally they settle back into themselves. And also, if, just to take even more inspiration from the show, technically, if there's a. I don't want to give away too much, but there is a version of a brain type thing. Almost like you're thinking about, like, all natural, not vegan, because brains come from creatures, but, you know, we'll go with that, like, all natural versus processed. There is there is something, I'm not trying to give away too much in the show if you want to watch, but the natural one has more effects than the process type thing. And the natural one, which you'll learn this, like, actually, like, literally in the first episode, so this is not, like, any spoilers or anything. Basically, the brain that you eat, like, from the person that had died, because in the show, that's mainly how most of them, there's someone who's already died. Which, I mean, maybe you can imagine that the sim was... I still don't know how they would do the whole brain thing ever. Maybe they would even try to change it. Maybe there's, like, a certain... Maybe they'd want to make it, like, a certain plant that they have to eat so they can try to... I don't know how they would do it. To be okay in that end and be... Like, it is a T-rated game, but still you don't want to go too over the top. So I still don't know how they do that. But, again, I'm just going to refer to brains. But you would get traits from... Like, you would get memories and stuff from that person, technically. So, it'd be cool if they had, like, one trait, like, an extra trait slot for the zombies that constantly changed. So, like, either it was empty and wasn't there, or, like, a temporary trait would pop up after they ate that was, like, randomized. So, like, one day they have the erratic trait, and maybe the next day they have the romantic trait, or the next day they have the clumsy trait. Something along on there, so that it's like, that would just be an interesting thing that they haven't done before. Also, is like that fourth trait randomizes and changing. So your sim is constantly like, though there are certain parts about them, there are certain traits that stay the same, just like normal sims, there is that variable that changes depending. And I sort of think that would be cool to play around with, because it'd be like, you don't know what you're gonna get. Like, you don't know what you're gonna get that day. And, the sim probably struggling, like, I don't know what I'm gonna be like after I eat this. So, like, you know, it's like a struggle and a balance that they have to try to learn and try to cope with and deal with and overcome. And that would be one of their cons, is the fact that they don't know how they're gonna act. They don't know what would happen, and then also the fact that, you know, if they're not careful, they can temporarily lose their minds, basically. So that would be, like, some of the cons, and some of the powers is, like, you know, the fact that zombies are technically don't die unless they're, like, shot in the head. So, like, more of an immortal time effect. Now, maybe eventually, I'm sure they would find ways around to how you can naturally make the sim who is a zombie die without being violent. So, I'm sure they would find a way around that, because technically vampires can also be killed by stakes, but obviously that's not in the game. Maybe with mods. It's not something I've actually looked into, so who knows? There may be a mod out there that allows you to attack and kill vampires with a stake. I'm not really quite sure. But in terms of the game, the expansion base, not adding any mods, or CC, they obviously would not do that, but I'm sure they would have to add some sort of balancing thing to, for the zombies, so that they don't actually, so there's not a chance that they live forever. Maybe one of the things they can do is if they don't eat for a while and then they go into that one stage where they're sort of crazy, but they still for some reason can't get food, maybe that's when they would start entering the part where they eventually would just die, though that's not very true for the zombies technically, but maybe that's something for Sims-wise they could do just as a balance. Now, one thing that really doesn't fit zombies is for them to be able to have kids in, like, real situations, but technically a lot of stories go with the fact that vampires can't either, yet you can in the Sims. That's something they probably shouldn't take away from any Occult in Sims-wise, because one, it's obviously Sims, they can do and change things how they want. They can stick to some of the base originals, but change them how they want. But also Simmers like trying to have these different families and see how they situate. Now, obviously, if they allow, if zombies became a cult and they did allow them to have kids, Obviously, the kids probably would not get any of the zombie traits until they were teens, just like they do for vampires, and what I'm assuming they do to mermaids, which sort of annoys me. Vampires, I can possibly get. Vampires, it could be like they have to grow into their powers, they have to slowly. I still feel like maybe you should be able to be able to feed plasma fruit to the kids and the toddlers, just because I feel like they'd still would technically need that to sustain them, but maybe not nearly as much as the teens and adults. But I can understand the vampires a little bit, but the mermaids, to me, one of mermaids' powers, the mermaids' powers in this game is the fact that they can have legs, but that's not how they're naturally born, in my opinion. My computer just made a noise, so yay. But they should be a mermaid at birth. Like, technically they are, but they can't have the fin or whatever. That part annoys me. With the zombies, I can sort of get it, but I would hope they would still allow the kids to still be sort of pale, have really white blonde hair. Maybe, they wouldn't have to necessarily feed, but at least give them some of the characteristics and looks, because they are a child of them. But I can understand maybe seeing that maybe the mutation that causes, like, maybe in their world there's a mutation that causes the zombie effect. So yeah, you're sort of undead, but not completely undead, like in like most zombie stories or whatever. And it's a trait that can't, like a gene that can be passed down, but it doesn't snap into awakening until like hormones or something, like are part of the reason that causes it. Honestly, that'd be terrifying when you think about it. Like if something was like some sort of mutation or gene was activated with hormones, so when you turn into a teenager, that's actually sort of terrifying. But yeah, so it's like something like that. I can see them saying something like that, but I would still like the kids to have like some physical characteristics. Also, there is a child in the show iZombie that there's a few children, but there's one that actually shows up really late in the show. She's got really long wavy hair, but she's a zombie. But she's like maybe 9, 8. But she looks so cute, in all honesty. Like, yeah, she's technically supposed to be the undead. And because she isn't eating so well, her eyes are red. Well, it's red around her eyes because she's lacking food to a certain extent. But she was still so adorable. I don't know why. She just really was. So I want, like, an adorable zombie child. Just like, yeah, I look sort of creepy, but I'm also adorable all at the same time. So, but, yeah, I think they would be fun in that sense, partially because of that. Like, the variable with the trait would be a lot of fun, not knowing exactly how your sim's gonna fully act that day based on their meal and stuff. That would be fun, and the fact that, they would still be normal functioning, but maybe you would actually want to try to cover it up. I don't feel a need to actually try to cover it up with my aliens quite as much, just because I don't know, I don't feel like that fits them. Unless aliens were trying to conquer my Sims world, I don't necessarily see why they would try to hide. So, anyway, I just still don't think the aliens were done completely right anyway, so maybe that's part of the reason also why the disguise to me doesn't make quite as much sense, but whatever. So yeah, I feel like I'm missing some things that I would want to mention about them, because I was like looking forward to actually talking about the zombies, and maybe they're being zombie occult styles. But let me know what you would think if zombies were like that. Do you agree with me? Is there some things you can add, some things you think I left out? Would you still rather not care for actual playable zombies? Just, let me know down in the comments below. If things were done that way, I think I would enjoy actually playing with them. Now, there is one thing also in the show where they can go full-on zombie, where they basically get really, really strong and really, really powerful. I don't know if there's any point for that if they were to make zombies in The Sims. So I do know that that's a thing that exists in that show that I'm referring to, so if you're someone who watches that, that's an ability zombies can have. Maybe they can, like, have, like, some sort of ability like that or whatever, but, I don't know if there'd be a point in it, because, in Sims, you're not really having to defend yourself or anything like that, unless your LP are telling a story. but that's a little bit different, so I don't see a necessarily need for that. For those who maybe want it, maybe they can do like a power system, like similar to the whole similar to the whole vampire thing, where you can get abilities. Maybe you can even have ability that causes you to go longer without having to eat. Or maybe there's eventually ability that you can get that can cause you not to go crazy or whatever, or, you know, something like that, and maybe there's one that makes you super strong. But otherwise, I don't really know if you would need a point for it, but basically just, you know, zombies trying to actually function in a normal world. I feel like, again, out of all the cults, they would be the ones that would, like, actually have to hide a little bit more that what they were, or at least in the beginning, until, like, other sims could be like, oh, okay, they're not as bad as I thought. So, you know. But anyway, let me know your thoughts down below again. I start ending the video and then I'm like, oh wait, let me mention this. There is going to be a playlist down in the description below for the occult discussions. So basically, if you're behind or you think you missed one, there is a playlist down there for that will have all of them. Let me know your thoughts on zombies. Let me know any other occults that I haven't discussed just yet that you would actually like see given a chance in Sims 4, and like to hear what my thoughts about on how it should be done. And again, if y'all end up adding quite a bit to the whole like zombie storyline or whatever, or like adding like more abilities or like things that should happen. I know there is a lot of games out there with zombies, and zombies also a lot of times have mutations, so maybe there's something they can do with that. Not really sure how you do that in Sims 4 either, necessarily. Because, again, this is not really like an action fighting type game, so, and I feel like most of the mutations for zombies help them survive in, like, those type of situations, not so much trying to live among humans situation. So, but yeah, any suggestions down there, and if there's quite a few of them, I can do a follow-up to this discussion, so that, you know, if people missed some of the comments, or like there was the first person to comment and then there was a bunch of people after them and they never seen the rest of the comments, or just to maybe bring it back up and bring in more interesting and have people discussing things even more. So I might do a follow-up if there's quite a few comments like that and stuff. So definitely make sure you talk down below, and thank you so much for watching. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe if you're not already, so that you don't miss out any more of the occult discussions, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!